Hey first graders, welcome back. So hopefully you got a chance to listen to the read aloud for The Little Engine That Could. It's my favorite childhood story from when I was little for a lot of different reasons. One is I love the characters. I love all the different voices that I remember my mom reading out loud to me, and then I remember reading out loud to my own children and to you guys in the classroom. So the characters for me is really important. The next thing that I love about it is the message, the I think I can message. And the message that even though the little blue engine was small and she had never gone over the mountain before, she still was kinder and believed in herself a lot more than those big, bossy, rude engines. So I like the message of it as well. So this week, I'm going to ask you, and actually probably a lot over the next month, we would have been doing a lot of these in the classroom if we had been there. And it's to read a story and do a book report. Now, when you get older, book reports get a little bit more lengthy and there's a lot of writing involved. And the neat thing about being in first grade is we get to choose a lot of different ways to do them. What we want to get across is what our story is about and if we liked it or not. Because that's really what we're trying to do in first grade is we're trying to show that the story has parts in it that we understand. We're reading the words and we're understanding what they mean, and that we can then tell somebody else what it's about. And that is the sign of a really good reader. So hopefully you have your book with you. And the first thing that you're going to do, now your mom and dad might have printed out for you the book review papers. If they did, that's awesome. You can use those. They're nice and easy. I don't have one. So I'm just using a plain white piece of paper. We're going to use our imagination a little bit. And I'm going to show you how to set it up and some ideas. And then you can kind of take it and make it your own with your ideas. The one thing that I always have whenever I'm working on something like a book report or a book review is I have my markers and I have my colors. And then it's always a good idea to have a ruler if you have one laying around, and then a pencil. Now I'm not using a pencil because I need you to see it on the paper, so I'm using a Sharpie. Now you know how Mrs. Minky feels about Sharpies. I love Sharpies. So if you are allowed to use a Sharpie and you are using one as well, that's amazing. Now, anybody knows when you are doing a book report or a book review, you have to start with the title. So I am picking blue since The Little Engine That Could is blue. And I'm going to write in my very best handwriting up here at the top, The Little Engine That Could. Now, whenever I'm writing the name of a story, every word needs to be uppercased because this title is the name of this book. So just like if I was writing your name, I would put an uppercase at your first name, middle name, and last name. This book deserves uppercases. Now you can see on this book, it has all uppercases. Are you allowed to do that on your book report page? Sure. If you want to copy exactly how they wrote it, you can. I'm not going to do all uppercases. I'm only going to do it at the beginning. This thing is balanced, so hopefully it doesn't fall over in the middle of this video. Yikes. Let's see. The Little Engine That Could. Now, if you think back to being in room 5, we learned that anytime you write a title of a book, you underline it. Okay? So there, now I've set up my paper, and now right away you would know exactly what book I was going to do. Now, the other part that's so important is the title. Or I'm sorry, not the title, the author. So right under it, I would write by And then I'm going to use the book because I want to make sure that I'm respectful and that I spell the name the right way. Watty Piper. Okay. Okay, now I've got to talk about what kind of information do I want to put up here. So I'm going to go over what information you could put up here. I'm not going to do it all right here with you because that would take forever, but I am going to give you some ideas. So the first two things that I could put up here are the basics, which are characters and setting. So characters and setting are really important. If you think back to some of the books that we read this year, for instance, like The Wizard of Oz, we spent the whole time talking about the characters and the different settings that they were in. We couldn't very well tell anybody about The Wizard of Oz without telling them about Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man. And it wouldn't be a very good story unless we mentioned things like they were the Emerald City and the Yellow Brick Road. So characters and setting are sort of like the big pieces that we've got to have. So I'm taking two different colors. You might just be using a pencil, that's fine. And of course, I would write characters. Dot, dot. And then right underneath, I would write setting. So this is your who was in the story and where did the story take place. Both are super important. So now you're going to pause this video and you'll fill in your characters and your setting. My characters would probably be the clown and the toys, since they're in it the whole time. And then I would probably list the trains that we met. So that would be a lot of characters, okay? And then the setting would be on the railroad tracks going over the hill into town. So that would be my characters and my setting. Now next, if somebody says to you, oh, what's that story about? You're not going to tell them the whole story because that would take a really long time. And when people ask you that, or when a teacher asks you that, they don't expect you to tell the entire story with all those details. But what we have learned, because we've read so many books this year, is that most good stories have a problem and a solution. So that would probably be my next thing that I would do on here. So I am going to draw a line because I'm going to try to make this fancy. Of course, if I was doing this in the classroom, I would spend a lot more time doing it. But since it's on a video, I've got to move pretty fast. So I might put problem. And then I'm going to split this in half. And then I would put solution over here. Most good stories have a problem, and by the end of the story, it's solved. And that's what we love about stories. If we read a story and it didn't have a problem, it wouldn't really be that exciting. Think about The Little Engine That Could. If the train was just going the whole time and it didn't have a problem and it made it over the hill to the good boys and girls, wouldn't have been a very exciting story. What made it exciting was that it broke down and it didn't know how it was going to get there. And there were no other trains would even help it out. The solution, of course, is that finally that little blue engine came and was so kind and was so brave and tried and got the engine over. So again, you would probably want to pause here and you'll write maybe a sentence about the problem or two and a sentence or two about the solution. Now, of course, anytime you're doing a beautiful report, you do want to check your spelling. Brave spelling is great, and I love brave spelling, but this would definitely be something that we would probably hang on the wall in room 5. And you know that anytime we would hang something on the wall, I would check it to make sure that your spelling was very close to the real thing. So this is where if you have some questions on how to spell words, you should probably ask a grown-up or older brother or sister, okay, someone that's around. So this is the information part of this, okay? Then we get into the fun part. The fun part would be a picture. Obviously, I would probably draw the little blue engine. So I would draw a picture right here. Now I'm gonna label this, I'm gonna write picture. You probably wouldn't on yours, but I'm just showing you how to set up your paper. So I would put a picture right here. And I'm, of course, drawing lines to sort of split up my paper, okay? But again, you wouldn't have to. The other thing that is kind of fun is out of 5 stars, how many would you give your book? So, for instance, the Wonders book that we read last week about bridges, I wasn't super into that. It didn't really spark my interest. I know we had to read it and we had to learn about it and we had to figure out how to get the information out of the story. But if you said to me, Mrs. McGee, how did you feel about that book? I would have probably given it 2 stars. It wasn't my favorite. This book, however, which you know is my favorite from when I was a little girl, I would definitely give 5 stars. So 5 stars is the most. And so I would, that's called a review, book review, because that tells somebody what you thought of it. And I would give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And then along with your review, when somebody says, oh, how many stars would you give it? If I said 5, the next question people ask is, why? Why would you give it 5 stars? So you usually need to write a sentence about why you gave the book 5 stars. So you would say, I think, or I thought the book was. And then you'll finish that sentence, ... Okay. So this is one way to set it up. You could also add down here, because I do have some more room. Let me tilt this down so you can see. I might add my favorite part. You could definitely add your favorite part. You could draw more pictures. If you were reading a book and you thought, my book doesn't have just one problem, you could change this and you could do beginning, middle, and end. Okay? And then what you want to do is you want to decorate it and you want to color it and you want to make it beautiful. So very much like what we would do in room 5 when we would work on our vocabulary posters, how we would color each section to make it look really great for the eyes. That's what you want to do. And we're going to be doing these a lot. So what I need from you is to challenge yourself each time. So this week, yeah, we're starting with an easy story, one that you might have read a million times. Then, as the weeks go on, your stories need to get a little bit harder. You need to push yourself a little to find a story that's a lot harder. You could choose Mercy Watson, any of the ones that we've read. You could choose Frog and Toad. Those are on YouTube also. You could choose any story that you have from home. But whenever I put up on Google Classroom that I'd like you to do a book report, I mean I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to design it for that book. And then you can always bring them to our Zooms and share them with us because we're always looking for good stories. And this is exactly, like I said, what I'm doing as a grown-up. these are just 2 books that I happened to buy for while we've been in shelter in place. And this one I loved. I read it really quickly. This one has taken me a little bit longer to get into. So even as a grown-up, we find books that we love and we find books that we're not super interested in. But the one thing that all good readers do is they understand those words and they understand the storyline. So that's what we're really working on. Okay, so enjoy making your book report or your book review. I can't wait to see them. Have a good time with it. And definitely send me a picture or bring it to your Zoom so we can get some good ideas for other books that other kids might want to read. Okay, I'm so proud of you. I love you and I miss you. And I wish we were doing this together. But there is no place like home.